Hello, and welcome to the Conscious Communion podcast, where we traverse through the inner dwellings of the human experience through conversation. I'm your host, Danae. Join me as we explore the interconnection of creativity and community. Hello, and welcome to 2024 season, and with my first guest of the year, Chelsea Holman. I had Chelsea on last year, and she was one of my first guests. And in creating and feeling into what felt ever present for the year, Spirit has been calling me to these organic conversations that are divinely led by Spirit itself, Spirit herself, Spirit himself. And Chelsea, when I was praying and just feeling into what felt right for this conversation, Chelsea came to mind. So here we are in this beautiful space, landing with one another, and I'm so grateful to be here with you.
Woo! Thank you, Danae. Yeah, I'm really excited to chat. It's funny because before this conversation, neither of us knew where it was going to go. And then we hopped on 10 minutes ago and we were both on the exact same page of like what came through, what's been alive for us. So I feel like that's a pretty good sign.
I'd say so. I definitely would say so. Yeah. It's our last conversation just felt so fluid, and so it was no surprise to me that when I was calling on behalf of Spirit to see what wanted to come through, you were the person that Spirit brought forth. So I'm so looking forward to seeing where this takes us. And thank you again for being here. Thank you for being who you are and just being a divinely led intuition mama. Like, you are just here to spread your love and compassion, and it's comes from such a grounded place, and I appreciate that about you.
Thank you. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you. Because I feel the same about you, and that's probably why our conversation flows so well. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Absolutely.
And being an inspiration for each other when it comes to that. So thank you.
Yes, 1,000%. 1,000%. And I think it's so fun to just, we really started off just by checking in. And I think it's so, we're coming out of the holidays, right? Like, it's no surprise to any of us. Like, we're coming out of the midst of what can feel like a chaotic season for so many of us. Lots of hustle and bustle, lots of movement around seeing people and being with people. And that can feel beautiful in so many ways. And yet, being that we are in the winter season and both of us are living in the Pacific Northwest, it can also feel really counterintuitive to what's here for us and in the alignment process of nature itself and these cycles that we can feel into.
Definitely. Like, counterintuitive was the word that came through for me too. And yeah, because I'm in Seattle, you're in Portland. We're in like the two grayest parts of the world. It gets dark at like 4:00.
Truly.
But it's true, I was telling a friend, I was like, there's so much preparation and hustle and bustle for this time that's supposed to be, yes, about celebration and coming together, but also about just like really like going inward and unwinding and nourishing our cups. And I feel like my whole life I just went through the motions of this is what it's supposed to be like, this is what things are supposed to be like, and just like going along with it. And I was telling you, Danae, as we hopped on, I was like, I think really this season truly showed me how I want to show up differently from here on out through all the holidays and all the seasons, right? Not in a selfish way, but in truly what feels aligned and a not only aligned for us, but cyclically, like, it's so important. And so many of us are rewriting this.
Which is such a beautiful reclamation.
Which is such a beautiful reclamation. Like, what an honor that we get to do that for ourselves. Because it is reclaiming and rewriting the story that was written for us by I wouldn't want to venture to say our ancestors, because some of our ancestors were living in alignment with the cycles of the earth,
Yeah.
but there was an in between there, right? So some of our maybe not so distant ancestors were experiencing the coming into capitalism and what that was like, and abiding by these parameters that were preset by society and the expectations that were created by living in the United States and even in other countries. And so we get to change that for ourselves if it no longer feels aligned.
Yeah.
And so that's what we get
So
to do.
true. It's like these holidays that I feel like originated in this sense of ceremony and devotion and ritual are now completely misconstrued. And it's funny because I actually sent this text to all my family members this year because I really felt into like giving gifts. And I said, hey everyone, like if you feel called to give a gift, I would receive that. Like I would be beyond grateful. But also to let you know, like I do not wish to receive gifts this year. And just giving that okay, because to me it's like, yeah, what are we truly supporting here? Are we supporting the person, or are we feeling like what's adding? I would rather like spend time together, or if you want to donate to a cause or to this creation that I'm starting, like that would be more I feel like there's ways that I think a lot of us are rethinking, like what does this look like, what do our cycles look like, even like you said, stepping into the new year where everyone has these what are they called, New Year's resolutions and feeling the pressure of that even.
Totally. Totally. And dropping that. Like, we no longer have to abide by that if it no longer makes sense for us. For those that it makes sense for, of course, do what makes sense for you, please. Like, that is, I think for you and I both, we hold that high on our hearts. Like, yes, do what makes sense for you, because that's how you'll then mirror to others how to be in your fully sovereign self. And we need more of that.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
1,000%.
Yeah. Looking at the cycles, but also what cycle are you in? What cycle are we in collectively even? You know, I even for New Year's Eve went to a friend's party. She lives near the Space Needle, and they do this huge show. And even a part of me was like, I was watching this fireworks show, and I was thinking about everything that's happening globally, and I was like, this just feels. It doesn't feel right. Something about it just didn't feel right, and I think it was because it was like still like not honoring truly what's happening. It was like trying to put on this happy face and this mask of like, here we go, 2024. And not to say there's this like martyr energy, but also there is, I think, a sense of it was really powerful because yes, these fireworks were happening, and at the same time we could hear this massive protest that was going on at the Space Needle on the ground at the same time. So you're watching these fireworks and you hear this massive group of people protesting, and it was the dichotomy of both was such a clear mirror for what's happening in the world right now. And I was like, wow. And again, it's like showing up as normal or showing up authentically. And so it was just like, wow, that was really interesting to see. Yeah.
I bet the dichotomy is, I mean, really, we've been seeing this energetic duality for now going on 4 years. I think a lot of us have seen it in the years prior, and yet 2020 was a breaking point for so many things. And so now to be in 2024, just to be living in a time where genocide is taking place and business is not as usual. Like, we do not have to live life like we've been
where genocide
living.
Oh, go ahead. I was just saying where
And
genocide
so
is taking place on a
No, go
silver
ahead,
platter
please.
for all to see. And right,
Yes.
because genocide's been taking place forever, but it's also like, here, genocide is taking place
Forever.
and for everyone to see, and let's continue as normal.
Exactly. Exactly. Everyone can see it now and in such a different way as well. And it's the expectation to,
Yeah.
like you said,
Yeah.
just be normal. Like what is that? And the dichotomy of those things, and to like, no, we for us to humanize our experience, truly humanize our experience, we have to feel it all. And that means deep, deep grief and like leaning into the grief, because it's not easy to feel into those things because it's
Yeah.
painful.
It's definitely not easy. Just as it's not easy to feel like showing up in certain capacities is inauthentic, even in ourselves, right? Like showing up at all these functions and events and overgiving our energy and feeling like, we should do this because it's the nice thing to do, or what I've always done. I should go to this event. I should do it this way, versus I feel like I need rest. And maybe during this holiday season, say yes to 2 things rather than 10. And instead of beating myself up about it, I just honor that. Right? So it's like happening globally, it's happening personally. I mean, that's just like one small itty bitty first world problem example, but you know what I mean? It's in all these aspects, right? It's like,
No, for sure.
truly honoring that authenticity. And I think until we really honor that authenticity, it's going to continue to knock on the door until we listen. It's going to continue showing itself even more and more and more until we start to actually take the cues from it.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, I think you and I have both learned this from our own experience. When you're living outside of the alignment that Spirit's calling you towards, there's ways your body will feel, like you will feel that. And we were talking earlier about energetic refinement, and so much of that is being able to feel into your energy, being able to feel what feels present in your somatic experience, because our body has so much to teach us. And so being able to be aware of where we're at, so we can either decline an offer or an invitation, not maybe go on our phones to potentially refine our energy in that way, right? Am I giving like this thing more attention than it deserves because I don't have that kind of energy to give it right now?
Yeah.
Like, these are the things. And there's so many other things. I mean, we could talk about food and nutrition and, right, the list goes on and on and on. And yet those are examples of how we can refine and attune ourselves to what feels authentic and nourishing for us in this season.
I agree, and I truly believe that in order to show up for others, we have to first show up for ourselves. Similar to that metaphor of like, moms in the airplane, put on your mask before your babies, right? Okay, maybe that's a terrible example, but we truly have to fill our cup in order to be there to support others, in order to support and fulfill our dreams, our missions, our families, our communities, our friendships. And when we are not filling our cups, we begin to feel it through our emotions, through our physical bodies, through our stress, through our thoughts. And sometimes it can be so subtle, and then from there it starts to get louder, but it's so important. And that's something that has been coming through and really alive for me, especially, is like, and maybe this new year is this kind of symbol of starting fresh, right? But it's like really simplifying and really refining and really getting even clearer on that. So for me, it's less about doing and it's more about being so that I can do. And like you said, like the big goals, it's just like refining, and this listening, and less truly is more. You know, when our energy is dissipated, it loses a lot of its strength and focus, right? If you have 10 arrows going out multiple places versus if you have one arrow that's being shot and that's like your full focus and attention. And that's been a big lesson of mine throughout the years, and really learning to honor like myself as well as others, I think is truly important, because a lot of us, especially women, have been taught to put others before ourselves. And we're really remembering that sustainability is quite the opposite, actually. There is a sense of putting yourself first. And so I think with that is, what season are you in? What is it, the season that aligns with this Gregorian calendar, or on paper what you think you should be doing, or are you really feeling a season of being more inward or outward, right? Like what's true for you? Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And I appreciate you saying that, because I think so much of the spiritual journey for myself it's just been an interesting ride, right? It always is. And for so many years prior to really delving into self and awareness, I was pouring my cup when it was empty. And so there was this people pleasing, just like capacity, that I would overextend myself in every which way. And then there was also a time in a season where I was only pouring into myself, which I think is absolutely necessary. It's a part to the puzzle. And yet I also noticed myself probably extending that maybe longer than it needed to go. I'm being fully honest, right? Like that's just me calling myself on my shit. Like there was moments where I was selfishly living in this egoic like understanding of like spirituality, which is like a really toxic cycle that can happen, I think, for so many of us, right? It's like, don't forget about the service part. Like when you feel like you have a cup that's full, don't forget to share it.
Up. It's so true. It's so true. And I'm hearing reciprocity. Yeah. It's
Yes.
You know, it's like an energy exchange, and to be on either side of the coin, neither is sustainable. So true. I'm so glad you brought that up. Yeah. It's interesting. One thing that's coming to mind is, so I know that I personally need a lot of time for myself. Whether that's alone time or going out in nature. And I'll actually have to like pencil it into my calendar and have actual days in my week devoted to like escaping, you know, going out in the woods and just being. But at the same time, if I did that every day, every moment of every day, who's that helping? You know? And it really is this like give and take. And I feel like that's like where the dance is. That's that beautiful dance of give and take. And maybe sometimes you're a little more ebbs and flows, right? I think we can be a little hard on ourselves, but that dance of reciprocity and it's true. It's like show up for yourself so that then you can show up to fill other cups, you know, so we can do podcasts like this, you know, to feel full, to feel like we are able to give, which is a privilege in its own.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yeah. To create the space for ourselves is a privilege. And so
Yeah.
for us to be able to do that with the capacity to then give out is like,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And we gain so much from giving. Like it's just this, it's like you said, I love this visual of
Yeah.
a dance with reciprocity. It's just so
Yeah.
beautiful.
And it's true. It unfortunately, in order for that to be a privilege in this world, that freaking sucks. That's the reality, but in truth it is. And you know, I think it was in 2020, I had this really strong image of my Persian grandmother. She came through in my mind's eye and she grabbed my face and she said, so with so much conviction, she was like, use your voice for those who cannot. And so I think like, yeah, people can look at privilege as maybe this thing that they don't want to wield or show, when in reality, our privilege is very powerful in how we use it. And so if you feel that you have the ability to share that privilege, what a gift, what a gift, especially like my ancestors, like my mom. I think I shared on social media recently, like my mom was she was born in like a mud hut without running water, without a bathroom, without any of these necessities. She was born in a country where she did not have rights. She was taken away from like her birth mother and put in an orphanage. Like that's just my mom. And so for me to sit here and not use my privilege, but there's this reciprocity, right? For those of us who did come here with these missions, or who maybe our mission is to just be in our heart, to just be light, to just live life. Like we have to fill our cups in order to be that which is needed.
Yeah. I love that. To be that which is needed. Ooh, I can feel into that one. My heart center's tingling just feeling into that. Just as like, the being which you brought up earlier is, and you brought just time up, right? Like taking time for yourself to acknowledge the being, to feel into the energetic capacity of what you have space for. And we were talking about the cave earlier and going into the inner cave. And so I know that you mentioned that you go outside and that's how you spend time, to connect with the divine. And also, I'm curious if you have any other ways that you really can tap into stillness with a little bit more ease. Like, what are your ways that you like to tap into that beingness or that stillness?
It's funny. Actually, being still is quite hard for me. I don't know if you feel this way too, right? Everyone has like things they gravitate towards. Like dancing, that's what I love to do. I love to dance. I love to listen to music. So of course, like going outside and being with nature, that's like that dance movement, music, those are like my top. Like, oh my God. And it's funny though, because when it comes to being still, I struggle. I do. Like, I'm not a big meditator. I'm not a big like I go on lots of walks, right? And I think that's like my meditation, but I
love it.
When it comes to being still, that's a tricky one. I think for me it's more presence, and maybe I find my presence in movement, and I find presence in when I walk out in the woods and I'm like, oh my God, look at the moss on that thing. And like just feeling it and being present and just like attuning to the land and speaking to like the trees and the fairies and the elementals and feeling the elevated states and presence and feeling in my heart. Like maybe that's what the stillness is bringing us back to. So, but sitting still is hard.
I know exactly what you mean. I think, and it's funny because I think stillness can also be just in like this space that we create for ourselves. That I like the idea of stillness being almost on the same spectrum as presence, because really, even in meditation, what's the end goal? It's presence. It's being present with ourselves, right? It's so if we're already able to do that in our beingness, then that's amazing. And being in nature is surely just, like you said, the awe, the wonder that can come alive when we get to go just be with the earth is there's nothing quite like it.
Yeah. And creating this presence in, you know, even like when I wake up in the morning, I light a candle and I am just present in my space. And I try to make it like a temple, right? Like that is presence, and maybe there's a stillness in that, or feeling our emotions. You know, there's a presence and maybe a stillness in that, even though there's so much moving through us at the time. Maybe that's when I'm most still. Which brings us back to the cycles, right? Like no one's immune to the cycles, just like the earth continues to cycle through all of the seasons. And yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And just like the earth is constantly rhythmically moving through the dances of the seasons, we too get to process these big moments in time and space. And I know you had a very big 2023 with so much that in turn helped you process and integrate. But through that, I'm sure there was also just layers and layers of grief and joy and compassion and kindness that you were able to, I want to correct myself there, that you were able to give to yourself because of the work that you've done, because that is no easy task. And yet with the work that you've poured into yourself, I'm sure you've been able to find a deeper capacity to then find kindness and compassion through all the seasons that you too yourself experienced. So would you mind sharing a little bit about that?
It's funny, I'm smiling now, but it's true, even in terms of, you know, for example, I think that on paper, we can think we want to be in a certain season of our life, or our ego, right? Or our plan. I say in quotes, our plan. But sometimes our soul and life has different plans in store for us. And it's similar to along that lines of, you know, New Year's resolutions. I feel like I should be doing these, although my body is calling me inward and I'm feeling like I just need to recharge and I don't have energy or capacity at this moment to be reaching for those goals. Whereas on paper, this past year, I'd had all these goals and plans, and my soul had a different plan in mind. And it was definitely one of the most inward, and it was one of the hardest years of my life. And I did experience so much grief and so much love and loss, but it also catapulted me, and I would never change it for the world. I would relive that every single time in every lifetime in order to receive what I received through that. And, you know, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like, I definitely, people see my light, people see our light. Maybe you can relate, Danae, but I know your story, and I know that, you know, it's often the people that have this light that have been through some of the biggest challenges. And, you know, my life has not been easy, but this year was the hardest by far, because it really, I see it as an initiation from this like maiden to mother journey that many of us women find ourselves on. Which, like, I definitely want to talk to you more about maiden to mother and like your experiences with it too, because there is for those who aren't familiar, like archetypally, we have this like maiden in all of us, You know, she's playful, she's fun, she's a little naive. And maybe sometimes she doesn't make the best choices, or she can play the victim, or woe is me. And eventually we find and access the mother within each of us. And the mother really is the creator of her life. Instead of allowing life to happen to her, she allows life to happen for her. And where the maiden may say, woe is me, why is this happening to me? If that makes sense. The mother had really been activated through my own experience of really being swept off my feet in love. I traveled the world, you know, this time last year, I think I was in Hawaii, and on paper I had everything I did. I had, you know, all these things that I was calling in were coming into fruition, and I was really ready to start this next chapter of birthing my own podcast and my business, and I'm really going for it. And I got pregnant. Surprisingly. It's funny because at the time there was so much birthing energy flowing through me, of creating energy, that I kept having images of myself pregnant, and I thought that was just that creation energy flowing symbolically, but no, I actually did end up getting pregnant. And it was really exciting at the time, and like I was like, all right, let's do this, here we go. It's a surprise, but let's go, baby. And I felt so excited. And it's funny because on that journey, at around like 8 or 9 weeks, like I ended up having a miscarriage. And something happens to you that unless you've really experienced it, it's hard to fully put it into words, but your body moves through a complete alchemical transformation. You know, 2 days before I found out that I was having a miscarriage, I remember I couldn't stop crying. And my partner, he looked at me and he was like, what's going on? And I said, I feel like I'm dying from the inside out. A deep, deep grief. And that's because my body knew before my mind knew what was going on. And it's true, our cycles, you know, our emotions are always inherently, we're all interconnected. One is not operating without the other, right? And so when I found out the news, I was like, okay, that makes sense. And to just be in those emotions was really intense, and just to allow myself to ride the waves of experiencing postpartum, of, you know, moving through my own, you know, just because you have a miscarriage doesn't mean that you didn't give birth, you know, moving through even that physical process. And I think that at the time I was like, why is no one talking about this? Why is no one sharing their experiences? Why does no one talk about this grief, or even just the what happens to your body as a woman? You know, there's so much. It's honestly, like, it was wild. And at the time, you know, I was in it. And it's interesting because as that was all happening, I had this really, really bad feeling about my relationship. And I felt like I needed my partner to show up for me, and he truly wasn't. And I know everyone handles grief differently, right? But through that process, I found that my partner was being unfaithful. And so I was grieving the loss of a child. Now I was grieving the loss of my love, of my relationship. And it started spiraling, you know. We ended up breaking up for obvious reasons. And I remember my grief was so intense, I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't feed myself. And I remember I couldn't provide for myself financially. So here I was now, even spiraling even deeper. And this isn't supposed to be a woe is me, right? But I definitely want to tell the story to truly, truly show both sides of both sides, like how it transformed me. And I remember lying in bed and I couldn't work. There was like no capacity in me that could even comprehend working and making money. And then I got COVID, all within the amount of a month or two. And I'm laughing now, but at the time it felt like I was like, man, I've gone through a lot. I've gone through a lot of ego deaths, even in my own spiritual journey, dark nights of the soul, and nothing compared to this. And I remember this man, his name's Ralph. He's my old meditation teacher. And he called. I haven't talked to him in years. Oh. He was like, Chelsea. He's like, you came through. You came through. Like, he's just like so in tune. He just could tell something was wrong. And he gave me a good pep talk. And he told me, he's like, remember, don't forget your practices. Don't forget who you are. Like, you got this. And I was like, yeah, I got this. And so even amidst that grief, I had to feel it all. But day by day, I called in community, my friends and my family to support me. I started slowly moving my body, feeding myself food, drinking water, all these things, these like really keeping it simple. And that, through that process, I remember feeling like I was rising like the phoenix from the ashes. I truly did. And through that process, I came through and I pulled through so much stronger. And I remember one day sitting on my bed and I was crying. And it was this deep grief from everything I'd been through. And all of a sudden, my heart just opened. Like, my heart was open, but it broke the heck open. And it was like this bright light coming through. And it was like, oh, my grief was opening my heart. My experience was reminding me of my power. And instead of being the maiden of, why is this happening to me? I started realizing why it was happening for me. And it really was this symbol of my life of stepping through from maiden to mother. And from that point on, I've been so much more expanded in who I am and my heart. And truly becoming the mother and co-creator even more so of my life than ever before. So, long-winded story short, it's funny because, our cycles of where we want to be or where we think we are versus where we wish we were versus where we truly are important. And I think that this past year was so necessary for me and my soul growth and for the work that I do, I was, we have to walk the walk to talk the talk. And so now it's like feeling into that energy of like, now I feel ready to create again. But when you're in those cycles, when you're in wherever you are in life, instead of like beating ourselves up, but remembering like truly like, sometimes our soul has a different plan and sometimes we're exactly where we're meant to be. If we just listen and be 1,000%. In it. Yeah.
Be in it. Thank you for sharing. That is such a deeply vulnerable and transparent story. So thank you for your truth. Thank you for going there. I think we're all going to benefit from you going there. All that get to be in community with you will all be better because of you going there. And that goes back to what you were mentioning before about tending, right? Tending to the self so that you can then just share your light with others. And the grief, so amazing what grief can do, because grief is really such a teacher in our capacity to love. Really. It's just this extension of love. And what an extension it is, right? Because it teaches us, like, we know about loss, yes, but grief, as you said earlier, before we hit record, it's not linear.
It's not linear.
No. And I'm sure for you even now, right? It's the visitations that potentially can come up with those experiences, because even though someone can integrate an experience and sit with and be with emotions, energies from grief can come up again and trickle back into your mind, your heart, and your being to remind you in whatever way you need to be reminded. And so to know that it's not linear and to still make space for yourself and to have compassion and kindness for yourself, that's being the mother for yourself, right? Like, not deterring, not running away, but welcoming the grief and loving the grief even still, because it's all a part.
It's true. You know, we've grown up in a world that's asked us to live linear, that's asked us to live in boxes and show up in a certain capacity every day. Most people's jobs don't even give them sick time. And so what do you do when you're sick? You just pull through. So it's like, I think part of our role is truly remembering how cyclical we are, that everything is cyclical. Everything. And being the way showers of that, because a lot of us are hard on ourselves for where we think we should be, or I regressed, or why am I still feeling this, or why am I not feeling the call to really go for my New Year's resolutions? When in reality, because it's your truth, honoring that is so important, especially as women.
Absolutely. Yeah, the cycles that we go through as womb bearers, so many of us who have the opportunity to experience what it's like to have a cycle, that in itself is a teacher of how we abide by the rhythms of the moon, right? And what a teacher that is, because when we really lean into what nature has for us, we are nature itself. So I feel like I say that more than I say anything on this podcast, but it's the deepest truth that I know. It really is. It's just when we lean into that understanding, we can find more grace for ourselves. And for you to really lean into the depths of your experience, I know has created more spaciousness for you in the here and now. I know it has.
I feel unfuckwithable. You know what I mean?
I love that.
Like, it's true.
Amazing.
You know, life can hand you experiences.
Yeah, totally.
And you realize that you can make it through anything. And that the pain, it's pain. But you can make it through that pain and come out the other side even stronger and more embodied in who we are. And like, I feel like all of us have stories to share. I feel like all of us, and we're not meant to do it alone. And like, I'm curious, even you, like what's alive for you right now? Because I know that you are also feeling like this Gregorian calendar didn't match up with your own cycles of how you're feeling. And I think just giving ourselves permission.
Totally. The permission piece, I think, is something I've been inviting for some time now, and it feels so much more innate than it has in the past. And I think that for me is actually probably one of the biggest transitions that I've felt in the archetypal movement from moving from maiden to mother. And because I would so often, from past experiences, I can recognize these moments of myself feeling like a victim, feeling like woe is me, that I have to do this, exactly like what you said earlier, versus now when I come into, I get to do this. This is an experience that I will learn from and that I get to simply be with. And when I get to be with something and not doubt its purpose, then I also get to release the attachment that I have to it and for it and from it and all of it. It's like, I think when we live in that maidenhood, we have this tendency to attach and grab on and grasp on, versus when we let go and just lean into, okay, I'm okay in this rhythm and this cycle and where I am. And if I don't create this thing, I'll do it when it comes. Like, but just like feeling into what feels right for the moment and not putting any outside pressure that doesn't belong. Like that, it also makes me think of what I potentially would have wanted for myself as a child. Like how do I want to mother myself in this time, in this season? I want to mother myself with full compassion so that I can lean into what feels right and refine what's here for me versus putting more on my plate and shooting arrows that shooting 10 versus 1, like you said earlier. Like that is so an old part of my story. No, it does not need to be the
I feel like
case.
so many of us are just like, no more. Like we're kind of just hit this point where we're like, we just choose, we're choosing to choose different, and not that we're not going to like ebb and flow, but yeah, it's like we're really, again, that you said, I think that I should or need to be, I think I'm getting to this point where if I feel that I should be doing something, that's a big indicator. There's a difference between showing up for others in a way that us being, there's a difference between showing up as this like we're part of a greater orchestration, right? We are part of the community, we are part of the whole. But if you're continually showing up because you think in a certain way or certain, like, that's not helping anybody. And I think we're all at our point of like, no more. No more. Like what who are we at our core? And then how do we show up from that place? Yeah.
1,000%. Yeah. And when we do show up from that place, I think it goes back to the dance with reciprocity. It's knowing that what will come from a holistically grounded place, like when we are grounded in what feels attuned and aligned, what will be birthed from us will in turn be of that same fruit. It will bear good fruit when it's coming from a grounded, refined place.
Yeah.
It will birth exactly what we poured into it. So, like, oh, the heartache that it's so interesting, right? Like, we had to learn the lessons that we learned to know what we know now. And oh, the heartache.
Yeah.
But that was part of the process.
Yeah. Earth school.
Truly. Yeah. I mean, I think your experience specifically is just like, talk about a physical representation of just acknowledging like life and what grief, like that is deep, deep grief. I appreciated you saying that not enough people are talking about it, and that postpartum is yeah, you were carrying
Postpartum is
life.
real.
And so to grieve, yeah, to grieve those parts of yourself is, it's a must for you to then be doing the work authentically that
Yeah,
you
and
do now.
I heard somewhere, these aren't my words, but I remember hearing it and I was like, I wish I remember who said it, but it was so, hit me so profoundly. And they said, to not grieve is to doing the thing a disservice and not honoring it. So I think a lot of times maybe we try to put on a happy face, or maybe are too maybe apprehensive to fully meet our emotions to the capacity that they want to be met. But in not doing so, we're not only doing a disservice to the thing that we're grieving by not honoring it for what it was, but we're also doing a disservice to ourselves, because that grief will remain. It will remain in us energetically, physically, emotionally, suppressed, you know? Even if we're unaware, subconsciously, it will start to take hold in the decisions that we make, in the choices, in the way that we move about life. It will have its hold over us in some way, unless we truly process it and alchemize it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give it a place to be, right? I think so much of not subscribing to the doing and the should be doing is feeling into the body, feeling into the mind, and feeling into our spirit of all that we've experienced, and not negating any of it. Like that's doing us a disservice when we negate anything that we've gone through. And winter itself is just the greatest teacher of that. It's nothing goes to waste. Living in the Pacific Northwest, like we can clearly see how leaves become mulch. It's just, there's nothing that goes to waste.
And even like this is sometimes this is some of my favorite times to be outside, because of all the mushrooms everywhere, the different types, the lushness because of the wet, you know.
Totally.
Versus in the summer, like there's so many beautiful things about all the seasons, and it's true. Each season wants to be met at its full capacity, and I could not have had my summer emotionally if I didn't go into my full winter. If I didn't feel it all, I wouldn't have slingshot to the other side as intensely. If I would have met myself here, I would have come out here, but I met myself here and I rose here. And like maybe that's hard to fully comprehend, right? But that's been that's been pretty constant in my life. Like what you put in, you get out, you know? Yeah, and that pendulum, it does swing, I believe. And so that, I think, wherever you are in your cycle, as a sense of hope, if you're in that contraction, you know, that pendulum will swing. But also if you're in your summer, not to feel that sense of worry, is it going to swing back, right? It's just, that's the thing that I think, like you were talking about spirituality, sometimes there can be this delicate line between selfishness or wanting to have your own needs met, and maybe it's in these certain aspects or ways, when really I think spirituality is a tool that we can use to ride the waves of our life, and to ride the waves of our life from here instead of down here. Yeah, it's like
yeah, and to be, and I love to think about waves, and when you go in the ocean and when you swim in the ocean, you know you can't fight against the current. You might think that you can, but when you do, it it's not when there's an undertow trying to take you under and you're going against the current, there's no benefit. There's no freedom and coming out on the other side of the, like, if the wave will spit you out if you just let go. And so part of the letting go is leaning in. Part of the letting go is feeling into the reciprocity that you've put into to that depth, so you can again be on the pendulum and ride the other end of the spectrum. It's like it's the most beautiful. It's going back to the dichotomy, right? Like it's alive for us in so many different representations that we get to see in this wild, lovely
and
life.
The pendulum, it's present within us, but also globally. So, part of what I do, part of what I see we do is like, we really are here to use our voice. And, like, something that's been coming through really strong is that we got to leave our bags at the door. We're moving where we're headed. We can't bring them with us. And yes, I speak in like metaphors, right? But we are evolving. And like, we're evolving back to ourselves. We're evolving back to our true nature. And a lot of grief is coming up because we're having to leave behind all of those things that can't come with us. We seriously, it's like literally having to look at it all and face it all and really embody all those parts that we're being asked to step into. And I truly believe that it's like, this is one of the first steps. You got to clear it out. You got to clear it out before you recreate or build the new. You got to clear it out. And it's not an easy step.
1,000%. No, it's not. It's like, I don't know about you, but when I'm there right now. Like, no matter how many times I tell my family not to buy me Christmas gifts, they buy me Christmas gifts. I'm sure even though you asked for folks not to buy you Christmas gifts, people buy you Christmas gifts. And now I have to clear out my closets again. And I cleared out my closets right before I left for Christmas. And so now I have to do it again because I don't like putting more in my closet than I have room for. A good purge always feels good. And I'm not saying like purge, like, yes, sit with so that you can make more space for. Because alchemizing, being with the thing, will create more space. And we can look at the metaphors because the metaphors make it make sense. But a closet is just this perfect representation. When we're stuffing shit in our closet, we're not going to have room for clarity, for good energetics in the closet.
Like 20 extra minutes to pick out what to wear in the morning. Can't put anything.
Exactly. No, clear it out. And it's just the thing that I know to be most true. It's when we negate the feeling, it will come back in some way. But when we actually sit with it in real time, when we get to be with it in real time, then we don't rob ourselves from the truth of it. And we get to teach ourselves about courage and compassion and kindness. And I know that all of us, to some capacity, wish that we would have had more of that as children. And so we get to reparent ourselves in those ways as well, which feels really good.
Yes. And truly, something I'm finding is less is more. It feels so good.
Yes. I'm about ready to like purge the entire closet. I'm like, it's funny. And it feels the same way with just like my spiritual life. I think there's been moments in time in my life where I've wanted all the practices. It's like simplify.
Yeah, even with New Year's resolutions, it's like instead of saying I want to do this, like it's like how can I let this go too? Like creating space, right? That's one of my resolutions. I don't call it that, but that's something that's been alive for me right now is simplify. Yeah, really. Really simplify, and then really discerning like where do I want to put my energy.
That's been the clearest thing for me as well, is discerning where I want to put my energy. I think I have the tendency to want to put it in a lot of places, and it's a hard one for me. And yet I know that when I show up with conviction to one or two things versus 10 things, there will be more heart and there will be more of my essence to actually show up with the reciprocity that those things deserve.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Chelsea, I love these conversations with you. Thank you so much. I do want to create some space for you to be able to share what feels alive for you in the creative space, because I appreciate your work. I appreciate what you're bringing forth on this planet. And yeah, I would love for you to just share where people can find you and all the things so they can locate you.
So you can find me on Instagram at amara.ritual. And that's that's the name of my business, Amara Ritual. And keep a lookout, because something that's super alive for me this month is sharing my story. I'll be sharing my story and launching very soon something that's really close to my heart, which is a culmination of this journey I've been on for my whole life, but really the past 5 years, I would say. And I'll be doing mentorships, and this mentorship that I'll be launching is called Unbecoming. So quite similar to like creating space in our lives. It's like truly unbecoming and returning back to our full selves. So it's a mentorship on embodying your higher self, embodying your true nature and your soul. Because truly that's really what's needed right now. It's unconditioning from all the shoulds, from all the I should be or I think I am, and really getting clear on who you are and creating and being from that place. Because I've been on that journey, and let me tell you, woo! There's a million people out there searching for that outside of themselves. And once you have that from within, like I said, it's game changing. And so many of us are being called back to our souls. So that's what I'm up to. And yeah, thanks, Danae. Thanks for having me. I love chatting about these topics. And I'm really excited for 2024.
I'm excited for you. I'm excited to see the dance with reciprocity for you. I just I'm really excited. I think anyone would be very lucky to work with you, and Unbecoming sounds like a beautiful space for folks to enter into the deconditioning of the shoulds. I think that was beautifully put. It's welcoming people back to their own return. You're a beautiful steward in that, and I appreciate you, and I honor you, and deeply, deeply thank you for honoring yourself so that you can then do that for others.
And then wait, what's hot and alive for you?
So yeah, it's been an interesting. I too last year there was things where I was like, but I actually just it'll come out very soon, but I recreated a new branding kit for the Conscious Communion, which feels really exciting. I redid my logo, and it's all done by me, and that feels really nourishing and just good, and it's really funky and fun, and yeah, it just feels really alive for me that I got to create and do that for myself and for the podcast. And with that, just new breathing opportunities, new breathwork workshops, and things coming down the pipeline, and also just really honoring what feels ever present, because there has been so much going on in my personal life. So riding the waves of what I have space for, but also knowing that it will come when it's meant to.
I've always admired your consistency and the way that you show up, and your graphics have always been so cool. So I'm excited. And it's true. It's like, I think a lot of us are really being called into our dharmas even more so than we ever have before, while also, it's true, navigating so much in our personal lives. So I'm excited for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And then also just the collective, right? Like we talked about it earlier, but it's when we get to have friends and stewards in this life like yourself. Like, I'm so glad that we have this friendship, because you are just a beautiful representation of this work and honoring the rhythms, and we don't need to shit on ourselves any longer. Like, we get to just lean into what's here for us and create magic from there.
Thank you so much.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being my first guest for 2024. And yeah, I have one episode that will be coming out before you, but you are the first guest of 2024, and it feels so sweet.
Fresh start.
I know. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So much love and graciousness and gratitude for you, sweet one. Appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. Mwah. Hey there, it's Danae again. Just wanted to say thank you for sharing your time and energy with me. If this podcast resonates, please like, subscribe, follow, and share if you're willing. Reviews help too, so if you're feeling the vibe, please leave a review where you can. Sending all the love. Peace.